Good morning, Year 3. I hope you had a lovely half term and you're very well rested and ready to start a new term. This term we are going to be starting a new text called George's Marvellous Medicine by Roald Dahl. We have already looked at a few of his texts before, so we're going to be starting a new one, which is really exciting. So let me just share my screen so that we can learn our new vocabulary words that are going to be featured in the text this week. Okay. So just bear with me whilst it is uploading. Here we go. Okay, so we are looking at George's Marvellous Medicine by Roald Dahl, and the book is also illustrated by Quentin Blake, who's a very famous illustrator who illustrates all of his books. I'm not going to get you to guess the vocabulary words. I'm going to tell you them because we have a few tricky ones this week. So remember, as I say the word, you're going to repeat it at home, and you can look down in the corner at me so that you can see the action that I do for the vocabulary word. The first one is rattling. Rattling. Rattling is a series of short, sharp knocking sounds. For example, in the picture, you can see that the coins are rattling in the box as they're being dropped in. So a rattling is a type of noise. Yeah, it's usually lots of noises. So a series of short, sharp knocking sounds. Rattling. The next word is solemn. Solemn. Now, solemn can be described as a look or a feeling, and it just means very serious or earnest. Earnest also means very serious and grave. So, for example, here you can see the news reporter has a very solemn look on her face as she reports breaking news of an accident that has happened. Okay, solemn. And for solemn, do a very serious face, solemn. It's not a feeling of anger or frustration, it's just a very serious look. If you've been told some very important news, or maybe even some very bad news about somebody, you would have a solemn look on your face. But yes, it just means very serious. If you're listening intently about something really important, you would have a solemn look. The next word is powdery, and we can put our fingers together like this as if we're touching something powdery. Powdery. And powdery simply describes something which feels dusty or chalky. Okay, chalk feels very powdery as it crumbles very easily. Sometimes snow might feel powdery as well. Powdery. The next word that we are going to be looking at is various. Various. And various just means many different types of one thing. For example, there are various flavors of ice cream in the ice cream shop. Okay, you've got many different types of ice cream, but it's still one thing. It's still all ice cream. So various just means many different types of one thing. Various. And for various, maybe we can do this. So I'm looking at different things, different types of the same thing. Dreaded. And for dreaded, I'm going to put my hands on my cheeks with a dreaded look on my face. Dreaded. Dreaded. When you dread something, you think about it, that's something with great fear or worry or anxiety. You're very anxious about it. Dreaded. Dreaded. Dread is a feeling that you feel. You can see this boy has a dreaded look upon his face as he's sitting in the dentist chair. Many people dread going to the dentist. And the last word that we're going to be looking at for this week is longingly. And for longingly, I'm just going to gaze with a longing look on my face. So longingly is to look at or think about something with great desire or want. When you really want something, you need it, you want to have it. It might be a brand new toy that you've been looking at for weeks. It might be a delicious piece of cake like this boy is looking longingly at in the picture. When you look at something longingly, it's because you really, really want it. Okay? Fantastic. So this week we are going to be starting a new text, which is George's Marvellous Medicine. And we are going to be reading a few pages, pages 14 to 18. So make sure that you either have those printed out or you have a copy of it on the screen, or you can just read along with me. Okay, so this chapter is called George Begins to Make the Medicine. Hopefully by now, if you haven't already listened to the video of me playing the the first 2 chapters, so reading the first bits, make sure you listen to that first so that you understand what's happening and it puts it all into context for you. This is called George Begins to Make the Medicine. George took an enormous stewing pot out of the cupboard and placed it on the kitchen table. George, came the shrill voice from the next room. What are you doing? Nothing, Grandma, he called out. You needn't think I can't hear you just because you closed the door. You're rattling, we've had the keyword rattling, the pots and pans. I'm just tidying the kitchen, Grandma. Then there was silence. And we're going to read this next big paragraph all together. George had absolutely no doubts whatsoever how he was going to make his famous medicine. He wasn't going to fool about wondering whether to put a little bit of this or a little bit of that. Quite simply, he was going to put in everything he could find. There would be no messing about, no hesitating, no wondering whether a particular thing would knock the girl sideways or not. The rule would be this: whatever he saw, if it was runny or powdery or gooey, in it went. Nobody had ever made a medicine like that before. If it didn't actually cure Grandma, then it would anyway cause some exciting results. It would be worth watching. And then I want you to read this next. Actually, I'm going to read this next part. George decided to work his way around the various rooms, so many different types of rooms in the house, one at a time, and see what they had to offer. He would go first to the bathroom. There were always lots of funny things in the bathroom. So upstairs we're going to flick over to page 15. So upstairs he went, carrying an enormous 2-handled pot before him. Let's read this next part together. In the bathroom, he gazed longingly at the famous and dreaded medicine cupboard. Hopefully spotted 2 words, longingly and dreaded. But he didn't go near it. It was the only thing in the entire house he was forbidden to touch. Forbidden just means you're not allowed to go near it. He had made a serious, so he had made solemn promises to his parents about this, and he wasn't going to break them. There were things in there, they had told him, that could actually kill a person. And although he was out to give Grandma a pretty fiery mouthful, he didn't really want a dead body on his hands. George put a stew pot on the floor and he went to work. Fantastic. Let's turn over to page 16 now. And I am going to read this part by myself. Number 1 was a bottle labelled Golden Gloss hair shampoo. He emptied it into the pot. That ought to wash her tummy nice and clean, he said. He took a full tube of toothpaste and squeezed out the whole lot of it into one long worm. Maybe that will brighten up those horrid brown teeth of hers, he said. There was an aerosol can of super foam shaving soap belonging to his father. George loved playing with aerosols. He pressed the button and kept his, and turned to page 17, finger on it until there was nothing left. A wonderful mountain of white foam built up in a giant pot. With his fingers, he scooped out the contents of a jar of vitamin-enriched face cream. So vitamin-enriched just means they've added vitamins to the face cream. And we're going to read the next part together. In went a small bottle of scarlet nail polish. If the toothpaste doesn't clean her teeth, George said, then this will paint them red as roses. He found another jar of creamy stuff labelled hair remover. Smear it on your legs, it said, and allow to remain for 5 minutes. George tipped it all into the pot. So hair remover is probably going to take off all her hairs. I'm going to read this next part by myself. There was a bottle with yellow stuff inside it called Dishworth's famous dandruff cure. In it went. There was something called Brilliant for cleaning false teeth. I think that's supposed to say brilliant. It was a white powder. In that went too. And we're going to turn to the last page, which is page 18. And I'm going to keep reading, and then when I say join in, you're going to join in with me. He found another aerosol can. Nevermore Pongin deodorant spray. Guaranteed, it said, to keep away unpleasant body smells for a whole day. She could use plenty of that, George said as he sprayed the entire can full into the stewing pot. Why do you think George says that she could use plenty of that, plenty of deodorant spray? Have a think about that. I think he's insinuating something about the way Granny smells. Liquid paraffin, the next one was called, and we're going to read this next part together until I say stop. It was a big bottle. He hadn't the faintest idea what it did to you, but he poured it in anyway. That, he thought, looking around him, was about all from the bathroom. On his mother's dressing table in the bedroom, George found yet another lovely aerosol can. It was called Helga's Hair Set. Hold 12 inches away from the hair and spray lightly. He squirted the whole lot into the pot. He did enjoy squirting these aerosols. There was a bottle of perfume called Flowers of Turnips. It smelled of old cheese. In it went. And in too went a large round box of powder that was called Pink Plaster. There was a powder puff on the top, and he threw that in as well for luck. I'm going to read this next part together. He found a couple of lipsticks. He pulled the greasy red things out of their little cases and added them to the mixture. The bathroom had nothing more to offer, so George carried the enormous pot downstairs again and trotted into the laundry room where the shelves were full of all kinds of household items. And let's read this last bit together. The first one he took down was a large box of Super White for automatic washing machines. Dirt, it said, will disappear like magic. George didn't. And we're going to stop there. We're going to go through the vocabulary words. If you have the task sheet, then you can just print that off and complete the words on that. If you don't, then it's fine. Write down the number and then write down one of the red words that matches the definition. So I'm going to read them to you now and then you're going to complete it. So let's start. Number 1, the definition for this word is very serious or earnest. Number 2 is to look or think about something with great desire or want. Pause the video so that you can answer those questions. Okay, let's move on.